to see. And whenever you have the fear of whether you're going to get to contract the infection, you must know, though, that you are doing it for a great cause of saving our nation and serving our nation. And therefore, I want to say to our health workers, we do appreciate all the work that you are doing. And all that has been said about this program, the progress of this campaign, is about the way you have handled it yourself. At this point, Minister Mantashe, we no longer worry about whether you're public or private. It's the same thing. Health workers are health workers in public and private. We operate as one team. The biggest burden of the COVID-19 started on the private health side. The pressure has been on the private health side. Of course, now, when we get the cluster outbreaks and we get the internal transmission, community transmission, we are now able to see that more pressure is coming to the public sector side. But also in terms of the tests that have been done. Most of the tests were done in the private sector, and at this point, the private sector, the public sector, is catching up because of the unevenness with which this infection has presented itself. I want to thank you for encouraging the mining companies to do what we have asked must be done. That all the mine workers must be screened, and that when necessary they must be referred for testing. And I'd like to say both that they need to actually do so with the private sector as far as possible, because if you don't test your staff, you don't have a business. It's as simple as that. Because true, as Minister Mantashe said, if we find that there's an outbreak in a mine, we're not going to worry how many tons of coal you actually deliver to Eskom. It will have to be closed. Because the issue is no longer about the mine, it's more about now the health of our people. And that issue needs to be understood. So it is more helpful to be proactive, screen the people so that those who have symptoms don't come in. Those who have symptoms must be tested before you get them into to the operations. If we do that, we will then save the staff and the shift and the whole mine by ensuring that those who need to be treated can be treated first before they can infect others. Because once we find that one person is already in an environment where they've got a risk of it spreading to other people, we have actually to intervene and deal with the issue. So we will be doing a lot more inspections, and indeed many of them will be unannounced. You have heard now we've got an instruction to do unannounced visits from the minister. So we will certainly make sure we take him up on the offer. We were going to be doing it anyway, and so we want to encourage all the mining companies to work with the provincial governments as well to try and make sure we synchronize the way we do our work. Having said so, the reason why we appreciate the donations is because we actually have started seeing a large number of health workers who are getting infected. A number of them, I think at the beginning, were largely community spread of infections, which means they would have got it from somewhere else, not necessarily from work. But of course, with time, you can never ultimately tell what would have happened. So at the moment, we have a total of 511 health workers who are recorded as having been exposed to COVID-19 and tested positive. And 285 of those are in the private sector, and 226 are in the public sector. Amongst them, we've got 68 doctors, and amongst those doctors, 26 are in the private sector, and 42 are in the private sector. Sorry, 26 are in the private, and 42 are in the public sector. And nurses, we've got a total of 232 nurses who have tested positive. 156 of them are in the private sector, and 76 are in the public sector. Then we've got other categories, which would be technicians and other lay counselors, etc. All in all, come to 203 of those. 103 in the private and the other 100 are in the public sector. Then amongst them, we have 26 are hospitalized. So the bulk of them are in self-isolation, and about 360 of those were in self-isolation. Unfortunately, we have lost 2 of those. We announced one last week and one the week before. And this, one was a doctor, one was a nurse. The doctor was a 75-year-old who was actually retired, completely retired and traveled abroad and came back and then got infected, but in the process, he'd been doing sessions here and there. So those are the 2 that we have lost, and we did express our condolences to the families of those affected. We have already have 149 of our health workers who have recovered in the process, and therefore a contribution to the protective gear is a very, very important contribution. We are going to be working now with the Occupational Health and Safety Committee, which will also involve a large number of trade unions, representation, to ensure that we can audit the stock available on PPEs in various hospitals and get a second opinion from what we are receiving from our own managers. The point has been raised by MEC Sambata. We do not want to see a situation where there is a contract given to someone who has got no possibility of ever supplying. We will make sure that those kinds of things are corrected. But we want to also say that we want to thank our people for the cooperation. There are already at this point more than 7.5 million people have been screened. They've come forward and cooperated to share the confidential information about the symptoms, whether they do have the symptoms or not. And in this case, we have had the MEC indicating that more than 1 million people have been screened in this area. Screening basically is a conversation about your symptoms. Is there anything that should make us think that you could have contracted the infection? So we're going to ask you about cough, about sneeze, about a sore throat, about malaise, about flu-like symptoms, about fever, and maybe take your temperature. It doesn't mean we're going to have to be tested. Once we find certain symptoms, then we actually start testing. We want to also encourage all the provincial health services and premiers and the provincial governments to try and work with us on the criteria for testing. I have seen that there have been instances where there's been a lot of enthusiasm to try and find out those who might be already infected. And so in some of the roadblocks people have been tested, we actually don't encourage that. What we're encouraging is that we follow the symptoms, because the yield to get more positive patients, you are likely to get it more if you are able to get some of the basic symptoms. Secondly, you will get more positive if you follow the index case, where someone has been positive in an area, you can test people around that, you will find more positive. If you also find that there has been a contact in a particular area, you test in those areas, there must be something that leads you, because this infection doesn't jump from someone to somewhere where there's no link. We follow that link. So what we encourage, if we don't do that, we end up with an inconvenience of people to be confronted with the need to wait for results. They now must be forced into quarantine when there's no basis for that, simply because now they've been tested, and now to wait for the results, it can be pretty uncomfortable, because you might spend a day or more waiting for the results. Now, if you're en route somewhere, that means your processes are delayed when it may not be necessary. We've discussed this with a number of provinces, so we hope that we can stabilize at that level. But also, we have done over 160,000 tests. That, by any standard, is a large number of tests. Now, people must just understand that it's got to work in a particular system. So in some instances, people have raised that, well, why don't we test everybody? Well, you can't test 60 million South Africans. We need to test those where we think the indication is very high. So, for example, at this moment, you have to test 40 people before you can come across one person who's positive. It's safe it's good enough for us discovering. the numbers of people who are infected. But you can't just go everywhere and test, in a way that's not structured. So please, I would like everyone to cooperate with us. At the moment, we have said more than 264,000 tests have been done, and yesterday we did announce the figure of 7,572. We will announce a bit later today's figures. And we've also reported 148 deaths. So that, unfortunately, is the way this infection is going to be going. And so we need to just work together to try and delay the spread from going on. The President has asked us to focus on what we call risk-adjusted ease down of the lockdown. Effectively, what it means, when we analyze all the provinces, 4 provinces largely, like Northwest, Northern Cape, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, have got very low numbers. There are several days where they go on without spotting a single patient who's positive. That means their risk level is lower there. So when you look at the alert levels, when we're done with the alert levels, a number of the provinces and some of the districts will actually be having a lower level of risk, and the others are hotspots, the ones that you have actually been reporting about the metros and some of the overcrowded areas. Those will need additional attention. And so this week I'll be visiting both Eastern Cape and Western Cape. Later next week, the President is going to do a similar thing, to give them support, to look at how to reinforce their response on the ground. So all of this is all about ensuring that we work together in dealing with this issue. So we have also been in touch with a number of civil society organizations. So next week we'll be announcing a ministerial advisory team on social advocacy and community mobilization for behavioral change to guide the programs that the Department of Health is implementing, now guided by society, guided by the churches, labor, NGOs, and all the other traditional healers, traditional leaders, just to say how best can we effect a change in behavior. Because the way to fight COVID-19 is social behavior. We will still be dealing with the issue of case management, but social behavior is where we're going to be fighting and defeating this pandemic. So with all of these, we are going to have to work together as all the departments in government. We're working together to look at how we're going to start getting the economic activities to be moved up to a point where we are now adjusting the way we live and the way we work in such a way that on a normal day we can prevent the spread from increasing whilst we actually activate economic activities. That balance is going to be tricky for a start, but with time people will understand. We're meeting and we're discussing with some of the churches, for example, what role they're going to play. They're very keen to go back to normal churches, normal prayers, and so on. We need that for our society. And we accept and understand that they've really made a huge contribution by allowing the space for us to create a distance by reducing the numbers in churches. So all of these together are the responses the government is consulting about to take us forward to a point of how do we begin to activate our economy, having saved the lives of our people. So that balance is what our people every day must know that they are confronted with. That's the decision we have to take. How do I make sure that I keep myself safe from the infection, and how do I keep others safe from infection in case I've got it, and how do you then, with that healthy life, go out to activate the economy so that our economy can thrive. That's the balance that South Africa must be able to maintain. And with that, we will call for more support from private sector to make contribution in partnership, but we're calling for support right across civil society, that it is our fight. It's a battle that each and every one of us as South Africans must face. It's a battle that each and everyone must win every day. Every day, the more you protect yourself from the infection, the more you protect others from an infection in case you've got it, is how we're going to survive as South Africans. It will take us much longer to get what is called herd immunity, when all of us have got antibodies and no longer worry about COVID-19. It's going to be with us for many more years, maybe 2 years, but maybe after that we'll be able to get the vaccines ready and all of the treatment regimen to be ready, and we're always watching and all the trials that are going on now. Some people have asked me about the question of artemisinin. Artemisia is a group of herbs that have been discovered that African people, for many years, they've been using this to treat malaria. They didn't have all the tablets, but they survived. And now we know they survived because they used this particular drug. It's a herb. I came across it way back around 1999 as an MEC. We were now investigating the problem of the resistance, chloroquine resistance malaria. Now, in this case, this matter was being discussed, and the continent was actually discussing how this artemisinin could be used together with chloroquine or other hydroquinonins and so on in the fight against malaria, as it were. Obviously, it's got antipyretic effect, which is that it reduces the temperatures and so on, but it is something that was being looked at in that context. So many countries, in China, in Africa, even here in South Africa, I know a few places that actually started it, because we worked on this issue with Medicine Sans Frontières, the Doctors Without Borders. This was the kind of context where we got involved in this discussion. Now, we have heard about it that in Madagascar they are using it, but this we classify as what we call indigenous knowledge system. Now, there are a number of herbs that people use, which if you use it and you find with it is your issue, we don't have to get involved in that discussion. And in the case of Madagascar, we actually did get a call from the government of Madagascar. They did ask us that they would like to be assisted in the process of trying to validate and try and help to investigate the scientific basis on which such a drug could be used. I had a call with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Madagascar, and there had been a call from the President, and we then have said that our scientific research institutions would be willing to support an analysis, as it were, on that matter. It's slightly different to the chloroquines, although it's a treatment for malaria. So we've also said that we will be always on the lookout if there's new information about it. As I looked around and some of the people were talking, it seems it's related to some other herbs as well. There is a herb which we used in my part of the land, which is called Mkhize. Mkhize is actually used for fevers, for flus. When I grew up, we didn't go to hospital. We used Mkhize. We used a lot of that. And so if you had fever, as young people we knew, you would go there and collect the stuff, and you use it for steaming and for drinking as a kind of tonic and a bath and so on and so on and so on. Now, when we come across those kinds of remedies that people are using, we make no comment about them. We just simply say we note that they are doing it. The only difference we get involved in as the department, as the government, is when you've got to deal with a scientific analysis of what is that herb, what is the active pharmaceutical ingredient in that herb that could be proven to scientifically, in a clinical trial, demonstrate an effect on a particular pathogen or a particular condition. In this case, we're not there. So we will leave the conversations to go on the way they are going, and we just want you to be aware. We're aware of the conversation, and at a point when it is necessary to assist those countries, we will assist them. But we are also watching some of the therapeutic trials that are going on. Very interesting stories that are coming up on remdesivir, which is also something that we've spoken about. So we just want our people to know we are aware of some of the things that are going on, but it doesn't change our approach to the fight against the infection. At this point, I'd like to stop at this and just to say thank you for the conversation, thank you for the contribution, and thank you for all the support that you've given us. At this point, we want to continue with the program. We will be going to visit one or two other places as part of our inspection. Minister will be going to a mine. I think we will be going to other places. But I want to say thank you very much for the contribution, and thank you very much for inviting us at this point. Let me hand over to MEC Sambata. Thank you.